welcome back to the Go AI podcast. I'm so excited, wicked excited to have the founder and owner of Wicked Technologies here, Alli Truttman. Alli, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Alli Truttman. Thank you so much for having me. Jen and I have been friends for years. I feel so honored to be on the podcast. So
We're alive and still doing this
I know, I
business.
know. I can't believe it. It's amazing. And hats off to you guys.
Yeah.
So I am a child psychologist by degree. And I guess I always tried to convince myself that I was going to follow that traditional career path and realized there's this like screaming person inside of me that says I'm an entrepreneur, but I didn't know what it was. Until life happened and I tore my ACL playing right after playing college soccer, tore my ACL and found myself in a predicament where I had the opportunity to build my first product and start my first e-commerce company. And now that has been 16 years
Oh
and
my
I've been an
gosh.
entrepreneur. And, I'm just so happy to be here today to tell you kind of the updates of where we're at today as Wicked Technologies and the new products that we're building.
Oh my gosh, you're fantastic. I remember starting Guardian Owl and I went to a GLI event and you were on stage talking about Wicked Sheets at the time. And I just remember being like, oh my God, I want to be her. Like, can I do this? So well, before we talk about just and I'm sure you're gonna get into it, obviously AI it has been very just rapid growth here in the last 2 years. When you think about AI, what comes to mind for you?
Well, I'm over 40 now. I am 40 years old. So, I feel like I am in the learning stages of AI because it was becoming popular as I was building my business, but an e-commerce business back in 2008 that used smart textiles, I was more excited about the, technology in fabrics. And I didn't realize that you could use, the technology and tools in and automations to help build your business. And so I have kind of come up as it's been popular. And now that we have this new product, the Wicked Smart Pad, I'm starting to finally be able to use AI and technology, machine learning, all those things in the product that we're building. So I'm not afraid of it anymore, which I think, a lot of people who hear that term, they just say, I don't know what that means. It's what all the cool young kids are doing.
Yeah.
And I'm
Must be
afraid
on
to try
TikTok.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Or they automatically think like, or use the buzz terminology of, well, that's an unregulated space and everybody's using it to cheat on their term papers and write their sales scripts and everything. And although those are great use cases, right?
Yeah.
That's just the scratching of the surface. It's not really how you can utilize AI best to suit your business or your product needs.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love it right now. It's helping build our core
Mhm.
business.
Okay, well, talk to us about Wicked Technologies in the core business because you mentioned the pad, but you
Yes.
started with the sheets.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I started Wicked Sheets when I was experiencing night sweats and hot flashes myself. So, as I mentioned, I tore my ACL, and I was 24 at the time, and I always and forgive me for oversharing with my new friend here. I was like, "How am I ever gonna have a man in my bed if I'm sweating
I'm so
profusely?
sorry.
Like, this is embarrassing."
Yeah.
At 24, you think about it and you're like, the only people that are sweating at night are either really seriously ill or have menopause,
Mhm.
right? Going through some sort of chemo treatment or diabetes, because those are like side effects. Night sweats are side effects of those ailments. So I had grown up playing sports my whole life in Nike Dry Fit, Adidas Climate Cool, Under Armour fabrics. And I thought, well, if you can wear that and it wicks away sweat while you're playing sports, why couldn't you have it on your bed and it wick away your sweat while you're sleeping at night?
Mm.
And so that is really how my first kind of like use of technology in the terms of fabric translated into a product. So I built that up.
And we're like 2018? Is that or was
Actually, so fast forward, a lot of stuff happened.
okay.
2008 was when I first started,
Okay.
but I really didn't launch my e-commerce business until 2011.
Okay.
A lot of different things happened. I was learning. I mean, I was building it in my one bedroom apartment when I first started the,
It's so
the company.
awesome. Yeah.
So I was learning manufacturing. I was learning sourcing and suppliers. I was learning about textiles and how to test them for different functions and performance. So like wicking factors and pore factors and all this stuff. And mind you, I went to school to be
'Cause,
a
like,
child
that's what I'm
psychologist.
saying. I was like, because it's not like you grew up in this. Like, you literally were learning as you're building this plane. Like,
Yes,
yes.
exactly. But, thankfully, I think the side of that that has been helpful is because I was in psychology and had a research background, I just kinda treated this as like a research project, like,
Mm.
customer discovery was fun for me because 'cause I'm like,
Yeah.
"I'm not reading this in a book."
Oh, yeah, I'm doing it.
Uh,
Yeah.
some just little highlights along the way. I did my first round of fundraising. I raised about $1.5 million just in the whole lifetime of that business. So you can just from the raise alone, you can tell it was a small. We called it a medical lifestyle business, but I did earn my way onto QVC via a pitch competition. And so now we're back up to like 2018 and was on QVC, had
What
just
a badass.
hilarity of events, and that'll be a whole other podcast of things, related to building the business and got it up to a point where I was starting to make some commitments with some international partners. And sadly, the pandemic hit. And I was one of those people who had a shipping container off the coast of Long Beach that sat for 3 months with product on it waiting for my customers.
Oh my gosh.
So, what does a business owner do? Like you guys have read 1,000 times before. I had a team working for me at this point. I had a 5,000 square foot manufacturing facility and I started kind of surveying the landscape and lots of entrepreneurs have this. I went into my bag of tricks of what have I worked on in the past that might be a viable thing that we can work on now to keep my team employed. And sadly, my grandmother had passed away in 2017 of an incontinence related bed sore. And so what I saw or experienced with that was she was sleeping on my sheets at the time. She was sleeping wicked, even when she was 96.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And her care staff remarked that her incontinent events were getting larger and larger, but she had this bed sore from a hospital stay, and they basically had to keep her out of a brief. So, adult diaper
Yeah.
is a brief. And they said if your sheets were just a little bit more absorbent, this is the only fabric that feels good against her bottom. And so I really wanted to focus in on how do I build something that can help my grandma
How do
or
I
your
fix this
grandma or the
problem?
next
Yeah.
grandma. And so I basically went back to my board and my investors and said, got an idea. It might save the company. It might totally tank us. But at this point, it was the pandemic, so we didn't know. We built face masks for a while. That helped. But at the same time, I was like, that's
It's not
that's
gonna
that's not
yeah.
gonna
So
carry
be
us.
sustainable. Yeah.
Exactly. So I asked for their permission. I said, if I get this grant from the NIH and they let me prove out the feasibility of this sensorized bed pad that works for incontinence and it works, will you guys allow me to pivot the business? And so fast forward, we're now Wicked Technologies.
Woo!
Yeah, and we have these three products, and the pillar of the brand now is Wicked Smart Pad, which is our washable, sensorized bed pad that detects moisture in real time and sends alerts to caregivers when there's a spill event. So we're selling
Mm.
primarily
Jeez.
to senior living communities right now.
That's incredible.
But
I mean, talk about utilizing AI and, like, within when you think using it within manufacturing, you never think about it in or at least I don't, like, with
Mhm.
this.
right. Well, and what is exciting for us is the timing was perfect. Right now, if you look at what happens in senior living facilities, there is zero data on incontinence because
Really?
it is still a paper pencil routine. There's nothing that is automatic that they can note when an incontinent event happens because diapers are just there as the first line of defense. They are intended to catch the majority of the spill, but sadly, if the diaper is ill fitting or the genitalia slips out or someone can't make their rounds, there's always going to be leakage.
Oh, yeah.
And so they can't catch it and they typically don't report it. So with our Wicked Smart Pad, not only can we detect it, we're keeping historical records. So we're building a continence like pattern for each individual resident. So I
Oh
would
my
know
gosh.
what time of night you're going. I would know what time of night you're going. And now I can help train the staff to say, Jenna's usually right around 5 a.m. We should go in and wake her up at 4:30 so that she doesn't have a spill event. And oh, also, we're now not having to change the whole bed and replace a mattress because it's saturated. So we're utilizing the way that we get our data to try to better inform our users. And then also, it has all these other benefits to if your pattern changes rapidly. Maybe you have a UTI, maybe you have something else going on, maybe you have renal failure. I'm looking at you, you're probably very healthy.
Yeah, she didn't look at me,
So
Connor, when she
far,
said
so
that.
good.
I know, so
Yeah.
far so good. So
Mhm.
yeah, we have been very fortunate to have, I guess, the product in the right space when there was innovation needed in the incontinence market, and we have the tools with AI and machine learning to help us create a better product for our customers, our end user.
So could you take us a little more into the process of integrating AI into this product and just finding the AI, saying what what problems could be helped with AI?
Yeah,
Yeah, like, how did that even
come about.
Yeah.
yeah. Like,
Well,
this is
so
and it's amazing to me that, like, again, going through this with my mom, like I said, this I mean, healthcare and all of this, I think of it as an advanced industry, so it's like, how did we not think of this? So it's
I
brilliant.
know. Well, thanks. I don't want to claim brilliance, but I hope that
I
it
am.
will. Thanks. Oh,
I
thanks.
am.
It was a moment of insight. We'll
There we
call
go.
it that.
There we
Mhm.
go.
We'll give it a moment of time. I think it goes back to when we were super fortunate to receive this NIA grant. So the
And what's
national
NIA? Yeah, okay,
Yeah, the National Institute of Health has agencies within it, and
okay.
so our grant specifically came from the National Institute on Aging, and they had a solicitation out for companies that were working on products or technologies that would help create better quality of life for individuals diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias.
Oh, wow.
So, with my grandmother's dementia, she was the perfect candidate. And by nature of the disease, they're spending more time in bed towards the end of life. Their skin is more susceptible because they actually lose a lot of the ability to feel when they're wet. And so they can't tell someone I'm wet because they actually don't even know it. And then there's decreased mobility that's coupled with that, along with just again, by nature of the disease, there are a myriad of problems that are associated with skin breakdown and fall risk and all the stuff. So
Jeez.
we end up getting this grant, and because of the grant through the National Institute on Aging, we follow a pretty strict, I would say, clinical trial,
Okay.
and we do a study using human subjects. So we have IRB approval. We have to like apply for all this stuff. Goes back to my days when I did research with
Yeah, I was gonna say
psychology
another
students.
project.
I
Yeah.
know. So thankfully, I had that experience, but it was in those feasibility studies where you're saying like, "All right, I just want to see if the pad works and if people will use it." But because of the way that the NIH lays kind of like their guidelines out, I had to have quantitative data. So at the beginning of the pilot, I gave a pre-pilot survey. Midway through, I give another survey at the end, and then you don't just ask like, "Would you use this again?" You start asking like, "How many times a night were you changing the sheets because of spillover? How many times a night were you, having residents report that they were wet? How many times a night?" And so then we started building a case, and then we started putting dollars towards it. Like, what would the value be to the customer if I could tell you how often or their frequency patterns? What would the value be if I could tell you there's a quantitative way to analyze how much you're spending on mattresses a year, and if we can protect the bed, here's your cost savings.
Oh, wow.
How about optimizing your staffing if in the middle of the night they're doing manual rounds every 2 hours and waking a dry resident, and now they are maybe stirring up some behaviors in that resident. Could I tell you if they're in a deeper sleep or not and tell you whether or not to go and wake them and disturb them based on their wetness patterns? So we start building the cases or like I guess, I don't know, the prompts for
Okay, yeah,
models,
yeah.
right?
Okay.
You start building that just based on the data from those feasibility studies. And then we started pulling in the tools and some of our like data scientists to say, can we use, Zoho to do this? Can we build an integration to do this? And so that's really what the foreground for incorporating AI and machine learning into what we're doing, was
That's like predictive analytics.
Yeah, that's
a
what I was
lot of
yeah.
predictive analytics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some uses because AI is just, developing at a unprecedented pace currently. What are some uses that you're and it can be, like, actually existing right now or just doesn't even exist yet, but that you're like, "I would love AI to do this within the context of my business."
Gosh, well, we're not there yet, but I
Mhm.
mean, this is we're not
But you're thinking about it.
we're thinking about this. There was actually just an article 2 or 3 days ago, where there are companies that are using AI to go through thousands of different fabric types and combinations to solve not incontinence problems, but to solve, things for athletes, right? So,
Mhm.
like, incorporating a certain fiber to make sure that their blood pressure doesn't drop at a certain pace. So, AI is actually building or pulling knowledge, from all these different data sources at an immediate or rapid pace, if you will, and saying, you know what, we've never tried this with this and this before to build
Mhm.
the perfect like athlete measuring, monitoring jersey. So like that's one thing that we're thinking about. We think we've got a pretty good tech stack right now, but
Yeah.
there are absolutely ways we can utilize that because prior to AI, some of these processes to find a certain aspect of your product could take 3 and 4 months, 7, 8 months if you have to incorporate third party testing
Mm.
in order to verify it. And we're a medical device too.
Mhm,
So we have to like verify everything that we test.
mhm.
And that is just a time consuming process. And AI is hopefully going to be able to help us expedite that.
Yeah. It's kinda similar to what's going on in pharmaceuticals where you just have generative AI just generate a ton of potential molecular combinations and just say, "Alright, which one should we pursue?" And sometimes it's, like, stuff that no human would really feasibly think of, but it's like, "God, that's kinda brilliant." So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a similar kinda thing.
And you take the politics and the payer out of whose drugs are getting combined and
Mhm.
say, it doesn't matter who owns what. Let's just see if these chemical compounds work well together. And if it cures cancer, then by all means, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Then,
Mhm.
yeah, we
yeah,
would love that.
then the option is who takes it and what do they do with it, right?
Yeah,
So
Mhm.
that's where the semantics and the politics do get involved because I mean, it's a brilliant tool. We just want to make sure we're using it for the right
for
things.
good.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for good.
So, okay, Allie, a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, they are still fearful of AI. Like you said, like, hey, you're past the fear. You actually have a product, a pillar product that utilizes this technology. Did you did you yourself start using ChatGPT or start using anything from like a day to day that helped you with your conversations around AI and with your competence around AI?
I actually don't use ChatGPT, but I use a form of it. I
Okay,
use Grammarly, which
perfect. Yeah.
uses
Mhm.
AI. So I had to do pitches and send investor emails and investor docs. And I was one of those people that held on to like, I am a proficient writer. I should not have to do this, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to use this tool. But when I added Grammarly, I was like, this is a no-brainer. It's not writing it for me. It is making sure I'm using the right syntax. And to be totally honest, the psychologist in me loved Grammarly as and we pay for our subscription, but the positive reinforcement that it gives me at the end of the month when it says, here's how many your word count, here's the tone you've been using. And me as a female CEO in manufacturing is kind of a daunting thing when my tone went from appreciative to confident, and I knew that because AI was, like, grading me, all of a sudden I felt more confident in my writing, and I know it's
Mhm.
just and I so it's kind of like a behavioral tool more than anything for me in my daily use cases.
I
So,
love
like,
that.
just, the affirmation that I'm writing something and it's in the tone, so it's not gonna be confused because I like to smile a lot, I like to be funny, I use puns, sometimes I'm inappropriate, and
And I use exclamation points way too often where
yes,
it's like,
Mhm.
okay, stop,
exactly.
Jen.
Exactly, but I think just that added filter has been really helpful for me to see and reflect on my own writing and presentation styles. So, raising money is really hard. It's a
Yeah.
nonstop process. So, if that tool helps me get my point across even clearer, if even if it leads to a no, you still want to get to the no faster
Oh,
instead
yeah.
of doing the song and dance.
It's
So,
all about
e-
efficiency and time.
efficiency and time. Yeah.
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 Gosh, I didn't even think about from a pitch standpoint because you had to raise capital then for Wicked, for the pad.
Yes.
Okay. Was that the last 24 months? Was this 3 years ago? And obviously you were using things like Grammarly to support all of these efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's I just closed my $3.8 million round, like literally like a week ago. So
That's
that's great.
amazing.
So we had
Amazing.
grant funding through January, the end of January, and so last year. So I knew I was
Okay.
going to have to start some fundraising efforts. Now that we had some feasibility, because Wicked Sheets still exists, the first product still exists, the moisture wicking and cooling
They're
sheet line,
amazing.
but that was not going to be sufficient enough capital to really launch into the medical device realm. Typical medical device companies need at least $1 million in capital just to get a product, uh, like not even to market, just to get a product through feasibility and testing.
Because there is so much testing then what because it's like
Yes.
medical. Okay. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
So Wicked Sheets kind of just does its own little thing in the background. We still sell sheets every day. It's wonderful and have 16 years of repeat customers, which I mean, that's like the best compliment any business owner can have. But as soon as we knew that grant funding was going to run out, I thought we're going to need to go and actually start talking to some strategic investors who understand medical device or have been in the senior industry and understand that this is a big problem. So I'd say it took about a year to raise 1,600,000, and we thought we were going to be done. Our first goal was 1,500,000,
Which is
and
incredible, Alli.
oh, thank you.
Like, it's awesome.
But we had applied for a phase 2 grant from the NIH, and that was $2.5 million. So we were thinking, all right, we close the 1.6, and then, 3 months later, it'll be staggered and we'll get this $2.5 million grant. And then you guys have probably all heard everything that's going on with the FDA and the NIH. They're with the change of control in the White House. NIH has actually had quite a bit of shakeup, if you will. And so our
Yeah.
that's a good way to say it,
That's
right?
I was gonna great euphemism.
Yeah.
Yep.
So our grant got scored fantastically, and then they froze all funds, and so we still have an active grant, but it's highly unlikely that we'll see the 2.5. Thankfully, I have very, forward-thinking investors and board members, and they were like, "Allie, we should not plan on this grant. We should not build a business model around it. Let's strip it out and see how much you need." And so we went ahead and said, "We'll just go and see, if we can get another 1.5 million, to 1.8 million, something like that." And we oversubscribed, and so we just closed 3.8 million without the grant. Yay, thank you so
That's
much.
awesome. That's so
Thanks.
awesome.
But we still hope, that the NIH is gonna be a big part of our story. So we have an active grant. We will continue to apply because when the agency is allowed to do what it does best, which is support companies who have ideas and give them like some, a little bit of a leg up with researchers and things like that, um, the sky's the limit.
Yeah,
But with uncertainty, nobody can do their job correctly, and that's understandable. So we still hope that that's a big part of our story in the future. But right now, we're gonna, rely on some. We're venture backed, so we're
okay.
gonna rely on some funding. Thankfully, I still own a majority of the company, so I've been really, really lucky to have investors and board members that believe that it's important for the founder to have a good slice of the company. So
It's
you
incredible.
you know this as a female founder, it's
Oh,
like somebody's gotta fight for you
y
because if
totally.
you do it yourself, you're gonna be seen as, maybe a little overzealous or something, but when you surround
Aggressive or
yourself with the
whatever.
right people,
Yeah.
they fight for you.
It's
So,
it's so true.
yeah.
I mean, you're the network and the people, the circle that you have around you, I mean, speaks volumes. So
Well, you're in it, so
thank you,
no,
Allie.
thank you.
What about so okay, so now from a manufacturing standpoint, have you obviously the product has a lot of technology in it. From a manufacturing, you're still here in Kentucky.
Mhm.
Thank you. That's amazing.
So fun.
Mhm.
Has anything been incorporated within manufacturing in regards to AI?
We actually just applied for a grant. The University of Louisville has an incredible manufacturing. I'll mess up the MELP. Sorry, U of L, for not knowing it right.
Yeah, I was like, I don't
But
know what I can't help you.
they have an incredible grant program that they'll match your equipment or a use of AI, incorporation of AI into your technology for manufacturing. They'll match it up to $200,000.
Wow.
So we have just applied for a grant for a handful. We have 3D printers and we have cutting devices and things like that, but there is some extreme automation that we can use in our manufacturing process that will not eliminate any of our jobs, right? So I still plan on having a full like team of sewers,
Yeah.
which we do. And sewing is not a dying industry. Everybody thinks that, but there are so many talented sewers in Kentucky, Southern Indiana. We've been super fortunate
And
to
they're all
find them.
here.
But I think there are opportunities there. I'll probably misspeak if I name which ones they're looking at to incorporate it, but I know that we've applied for this grant and it is specific to utilizing AI and machine learning to incorporate even some of the
Mhm.
software things that we're doing right now. So
Well, in talking to you, I mean, you're you may not feel like this, but you're so far ahead of where some manufacturing companies are, where I mean, they're still kind of not putting their head in the sand and being fearful and scared. And here you are applying for grants, looking at your operation and saying, okay, how can we be more efficient here? We're not eliminating any of our staff. We just want to be able to, whether it's um, you said they automate certain processes or just make everything more efficient. The fact that you're even looking in and doing this, it's inspiring. And I feel like I hope that this is inspiring or motivating to manufacturers that are listening
I
that you
hope so
have to.
too. And we have just been I've said it 3 times. Sorry, we've been so fortunate because we've been able to find and connect with these people, and they that's the other thing about grant funding. They have the funds, they
Mm.
wanna spend it, you just have to write the right application for it, right? A lot of people have plenty of use cases and needs, and they don't know how to apply for the grants, or they don't even know where to look. And so, um, having young people on your team is obviously very, very helpful because they're so much more sophisticated and computer savvy, but manufacturing is how many thousands of years old,
I
right?
know, that's
Mhm.
yeah, exactly.
So, if you can incorporate a little bit of entrepreneurism into your manufacturing process, you're going to start weeding out processes that are outdated or unsafe. Or, like you said, efficiency is king because we want to keep manufacturing here. If we
Yeah.
can't produce as fast as our sales will hopefully, allow us, we are going to have to look at those other options. And I don't want to have to be in that case. So, we registered with the FDA as our manufacturing facility is here in Kentucky. And I hope that that address doesn't have to change. Well, it might change within
But we
Jefferson
wanted to keep it in
County.
Kentucky.
Yes. Hopefully, we
Mhm.
outgrow our space and our sales are just so high that we have to do it, but it's gonna be through the use of technology that allows us to do that, allows us to scale a lot faster,
Mhm.
and hopefully edge out competition. I mean,
Well,
that's a
exactly,
whole
that's what I'm
other side
saying.
of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
exactly, and that's why it's inspiring to hear you talk like this when some of our listeners, but we meet with owners just with Guardian Owl where, I mean, they're still operating on, an Excel spreadsheet for their CRM or database, and it's like, "Oh my goodness."
I know,
Mhm.
I
And
know. Well,
so
that's actually a great point. So we are just now starting an EQMS system. So quality management system is required for medical devices,
okay,
and it
I didn't
syncs
even know
up to
that.
our ERP,
Okay,
which
yeah,
is like
and your
what is
enterprise
resource planner?
yes.
ERP, yeah, something like that.
Platform? Platform.
Platform.
Yes, I think it's
Okay.
platform.
And what we're coming up against is, those are obviously very expensive. And if you're not the right size business yet, you don't want to overbuy the house, right? So we found one that's right size for us, but they have, assured us, and I won't mention their name, they're a great company to work with, but they've assured us that they're looking at integrations with QuickBooks, with HubSpot,
Yep.
with all that, and they're gonna need to use Zapier or whatever it's called, I think it's
You're
Zap,
right. Yeah,
okay, to help in the interim to do that because it will go back to that old manual process, and that's my fear, right?
yeah.
So you wanna take a risk on technology, but you hope that they catch up fast enough, and I think a lot of these newer quality management systems that are popping up have that mindset, and these ERPs have that mindset, so I think you're gonna see a lot of change in that industry because it used to be that only large manufacturers could use ERPs
Ex
because they're the only ones that could afford them.
exactly.
But
Yeah.
but smaller guys like us will never be able to survive if we don't do that, but we'll never be able to afford it if we're this size. So,
Mhm.
we just have to use technology to help us
Yeah.
maintain and integrate.
Mhm. So we've mentioned um, AI being used with products, but just on like an individual day to day level, one of the growing um, parts of the AI industry right now is in developing agential AI, meaning like AI agents that can truly just go off and do their own thing. And you just kind of give it a directive and you can kind of just put your hands off and it'll do something for you. So they could be like, ordering something on like, Amazon or something. Anything. I mean, whatever you want, it can basically go and use the internet for you, basically. What within your role specifically would you like to have agential AI do for you?
Oh, that's a great question. My mind automatically gravitates towards um customer service type responses. But
Oh,
I'm also on the same side, I also know that our business and our product is such a personal product that that human touch point, whether it's me or someone else from my team, is really, really important. So I would, in one side of my brain, like I said, I would love to say customer service responses and making sure, even at least at the first touch point, they say, "Hey, we know that you need something. We're gonna let Allie know, and she'll get back to you." Just to know that they feel heard and recognized, and know that they're in the queue. I think that's like the first thing that my mind gravitates towards. In terms of the like just efficiencies in terms of like ordering or placing an order is a great
Mhm,
example. It's gonna be a little harder for our business just on the medical device side because we do have to do everything now through that ERP system. So, if there are automations in the future, I have a feeling my team would probably be open to that. But in first, first glance or inclination, I would say it's going to be more of that customer success, um, like measurement and management. That would probably be a best fit for us.
Okay.
Isn't it crazy that, I mean, the pad, I mean, you look back 30 years, 40 years ago, I mean, your grandma, right? I
Right.
mean, this technology wasn't available. And now you actually, I don't know how the data works for you, but like, do the hospitals then or a senior living care facility, do they own that data or is that Wicked Technologies data where then you all can take that back and optimize the product even further? How does that work?
I believe, at least in the pilots, we own the pilot data. But once they become a paying customer, they will own their data.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, and there's a whole set of HIPAA rules and everything, and we actually, also important to note, we don't need anything about their personal information except their room number. So,
That's so
like their
cool.
apartment number or room number, because the sensor and monitoring device just stays with that resident, and so we know that that resident or that monitor belongs in that room, and so we can track their continence patterns, that way. So, there's a lot of, HIPAA regulations
Okay, that makes
and
sense.
data privacy laws, and now, I mean, actually, another wild, wild west right now is cybersecurity of because we have an app. So we want to integrate with all of their
Oh, okay. Yeah.
software programs with their APIs, but there are 50 alleys standing in line going, please integrate with my device. And so we were like, well, what's the path of least resistance? We developed an app that can be, Android and iOS, and can be put up on desktops or whichever their device is of their choosing at their facility. And so we have this cybersecurity, set of criteria that FDA right now hasn't released updates. And so we are operating under what we know right now, but it hasn't been updated in a couple of years. So
Oh my
we
gosh.
hope that it is maintained. And also there are a bunch of layoffs in FDA recently too. So maybe that'll get like pushed in the back. But medical device world is very, very different. HIPAA, FDA, cybersecurity,
Yeah, I
all
didn't
that
even think
stuff.
about HIPAA. I'm like,
Oh,
"Oh, yeah, duh,
yes.
data. Okay, got
But yeah, I
it."
mean, our saving grace is that we don't need anything except for the apartment number or the room number that they're in. And if we sell direct to consumer, they name their device. We just know that it's gone in somewhere and it's hooked to a Wi-Fi. That's it.
I mean,
Mhm.
Allie, that's incredible.
Oh, thank you. We're really proud of it.
Well, so, first of all, thank you for being on Go AI podcast. Is there anything that you would leave our listeners with? I mean, obviously, you serial entrepreneur, but I mean, you started and you're still manufacturing, but sheets to now utilizing this technology, medical device. I mean, you've had such a crazy journey and you have learned everything along the way. So, what would you leave our audience with when it comes to AI and incorporating it in their business?
To not be afraid to learn, right? So
Oh,
don't be afraid to learn the stuff that seems maybe archaic or not archaic, maybe
intimidating.
intimidating. Yeah, yeah.
That's it where it's like, "Eek, I don't even know how to spell that word."
Exactly. So, something that you can do is learn every day. Don't be afraid to create. And there are all these tools that are intended to help you, not to scare you. So, someone on YouTube or in some podcast,
There we go.
right,
Thank you.
can teach you and take away a lot of that stuff that might seem daunting because it's a new language for you, right? It's a new
Yeah.
terminology, but don't be afraid to learn and keep creating and keep building and surround yourself with really smart people to help you along the way.
I love that. I love your words. How do people contact you, Allie? How do they
Yes,
find you?
go to wickedsmartpad.com. There's a contact us form on there. Also, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Alli Truttman on LinkedIn.
Perfect.
But I invite everybody to get smart about incontinence care.
There we go. And we
Mhm.
will drop all of that in the show notes too. So, Allie, thank you for being a guest on the Go AI
Yeah.
podcast.
Thanks for coming on.